If you recognise that music, then this game and series would have played a big part in your FPS experience. Medal of Honor was honestly one of the biggest FPSs of all time and is still remembered for what it did to the industry and the genre. Back in the late 1990s and very early 2000s, FPS games were all pretty similar with their themes and the enemies you fought against, but the Medal of Honor franchise was one of the first to take things in a new direction. This franchise became one of the first big titles to explore mature themes of warfare, incorporating interactive elements with historical events, and it was one of the first big games to have a huge Hollywood backing, utilising real-world experiences from military individuals to educate its audiences. Medal of Honor was quite simply huge, and it is very rare for anyone who is a fan of this genre to not have played at least one of the games. Allied Assault, Airborne, Underground, Medal of Honor had hit after hit of great games, and they were the face of the FPS genre for a good while, way before Call of Duty or Battlefield dominated the charts. It was also regarded as the mature shooter compared to games like Halo, for example. However, during the late 2000s, the Medal of Honor franchise started to lose its popularity. Their games were becoming more and more stale, and their competition was forcing them to become a shadow of their former selves. By 2012, Medal of Honor was gone. The IP was put on hold by EA, and the chances of seeing another title like Airborne or Allied Assault was highly unlikely. However, that all changed with the announcement made by Respawn Entertainment in 2020, announcing the return of Medal of Honor, but this time as a VR game. So in this video I want to ask and answer the question, what happened to Medal of Honor? Where did it all go wrong for the series, and how did it go from that classic game that changed an industry to games that will be easily forgotten? And also, will the return of Medal of Honor under Respawn Entertainment help boost players back into this classic franchise? So welcome to Wisefish, and today we will be looking at the full history of the classic FPS franchise, Medal of Honor. The year was 1999. The FPS genre was a sea of different games such as Doom, GoldenEye, Half-Life and Unreal Tournament to name a few. PC gamers had such a wide variety of choices, and the new auto-lock system that was added to games like GoldenEye was giving console fans a taste for the genre. But there was one story that had never been told before in a shooter, and that was a real warfare, more specifically World War II. In 1997, Hollywood superstar director Steven Spielberg, who was teamed up with the developers DreamWorks Interactive, makers of games such as Small Soldiers, Lost World, Jurassic Park, and Steven Spielberg's director's chair, sat down and had a meeting about a new video game project. Spielberg had never really fully engaged with video games before now. However, after watching his son Max playing the widely popular 007 game GoldenEye, he came to realise that this was a chance to help widen people's interests in something he was deeply passionate about, the events of World War II. Spielberg's idea was to make an interesting, historically accurate depiction of the events of World War II and help people experience what it would have been like to fight in the war, using this new interactive medium. DreamWorks would have been mad to turn him down and immediately said yes, with production setting up almost immediately. By 1998, a prototype version of the game had been made with lots of features that were different from the retail release, like a bigger health bar, different weapon skins and animations, and a lot more gore such as body parts coming off and lots of blood, which can be seen in the final trailer but not in the actual game. Why no gore? Well, sadly this had to be changed because of the recent events in Columbine High School, which we all know now as the Columbine High School Massacre. By 1999, the game was in its final stages and was so close to being shipped. However, there was another problem, and quite a big one as well. Paul Butcher, a representative of the Medal of Honor committee, rejected the release of the game, stating the use of the name was dishonourable and was an insult to the military and the actual award. However, Butcher was shown a demonstration of the game and was talked through what the aim of it was, showing off the story, the background of the game, the people involved, and the gameplay. Butcher, after seeing this demonstration, quickly changed his view on its title and allowed it to go ahead for its scheduled release. It's also worth noting at this point that this first game wasn't just Spielberg and a group of developers working on the game. Spielberg always wanted to get it right and historically accurate. So during the development, he brought in his fellow colleague and friend Dale Dye, a Marine veteran who served in the Vietnam War and a famous face for anyone who has watched Saving Private Ryan, Platoon, and well, almost any military film. Dye was Spielberg's close military advisor who helped him keep things authentic and not inaccurate, meaning that Medal of Honor stood out as being extremely accurate to real events, in its tone anyway. Eventually, on the 31st of October 1999, Medal of Honor was released on the original PlayStation and was praised left, right and centre. The game sold thousands of copies and immediately went up the charts. Reviewers all praised it, with one reviewer stating, "It's the best PlayStation FPS in ages." Medal of Honor proves that few things are more satisfying than shooting a Nazi in the face. Probably a statement no modern reviewer would be able to make due to sensitivity issues, but it certainly was high praise indeed at the time. Medal of Honor focused on the main character, Lieutenant Jimmy Patterson, who was recruited into the OSS, aka the Office of Strategic Services. During the missions, you would venture through the nighttime streets, taking out Nazis, recovering stolen artwork, and sabotaging the Nazi war effort. The game was set at night due to technological restraints, but also helped set a more stealth-type tone to the overall game. Levels for the most part were quite linear, but they still had a lot of open areas allowing you to explore the streets, which was quite different to anything else before. There was also a mechanic which was very refreshing, where you had to show off your identity papers to trick the guards into letting you into their base. And this reminds me a lot of that mission from Call of Duty World War II. Coincidence? I don't think so. The music, which has also become iconic now, was written by the Oscar-winning composer Michael Giacchino, I think that's how you pronounce it, who has worked with so many huge directors in his time, such as J.J. Abrams, Brad Bird, Matt Reeves, and Drew Goddard, to name a few. Medal of Honor was a fantastic game to play, even though it was only on PlayStation, and on top of a thrilling campaign, it also featured a split-screen deathmatch mode, where two players would fight to the death on various maps. Here you could also unlock notable historical figures to play, such as William Shakespeare and José Rizal. Also, you could get a German Shepherd and a dinosaur. Okay, maybe it wasn't 100% historically accurate, but it was still a good fun feature. Medal of Honor set the bar for what a modern FPS game could be. Thanks to Spielberg's vision, it was shown that FPS games could be more serious in tone and also help educate people through gameplay and cutscenes which use actual war footage. It was a breath of fresh air, and that was certainly expressed in all of the reviews it received. After the huge success of the first game, DreamWorks immediately got to work on their second title of the franchise. Medal of Honor Underground took a different tonal approach to the first, but kept the same gameplay elements, making for a refreshing game that felt new yet familiar to the fans of the series. Released on the 23rd of October 2000, almost exactly 1 year after the first game, Underground was released solely on the PlayStation once again. However, 2 years after its release, it did eventually go onto the Game Boy Advance, but with some completely different graphics and gameplay. Underground still had us following an OSS soldier, but this time under the name of Manon Baptiste, who was based on the real OSS soldier Helen de Camp Adams, who went on later in life to be the forerunner of the CIA. Quite an important figure to say the least. Once again, the team behind the game made sure to do their research, meeting up with the members of the French resistance, speaking about their experiences during the war, and actually spoke to de Camp Adams about her role in it. The aim of the game was to, once again, infiltrate the Nazi bases, take out the war effort, and do the same tasks as the first. However, the story was much more personal, focusing on Manon's backstory and what it was like fighting in the resistance. Gameplay also reflected a more gritty approach, using Molotovs and much harsher weaponry compared to the more military focus of the first. Michael Giacchino was hired again for the soundtrack and came up with a soundtrack that was, in his words, more emotionally driven, as this game had a completely different tone from the first. Medal of Honor Underground was not as well received compared to the first game, but was still praised as being a well-rounded FPS. Reviews varied, however, with most giving it around a solid 8 or 9 out of 10, with a few giving it just an average 5 out of 10. The Game Boy Advance version was massively criticised, gaining only a 5 out of 10 by all publications, mainly because of the technical limitations of it. Medal of Honor, despite having a poor Game Boy game, had hit back with another great title that told a brand new, emotionally driven story set in a totally different setting of World War II. But the series was just getting started. It had laid down the foundations for something special, and its next release was to push this game from being a new up-and-coming franchise to one of the biggest games in the industry. After the release of Medal of Honor Underground, DreamWorks Interactive was purchased by EA and was rebranded as EA Los Angeles. EA were to take on the Medal of Honor license completely and pump all of their resources into making this their next big franchise. In 2002, EA hired a new development company to work on their latest title of the series. That company was the small group of developers known as 2015 Inc. Now, if you haven't watched my History of Respawn Entertainment video, then in that I explained that 2015 was a group of modders who were creating expansions for other games at the time. These were the original creators of Call of Duty Modern Warfare and would go on to form what we now know as Respawn Entertainment, something that is very significant that I will get onto in a bit. 2015 started production of their newest Medal of Honor game titled Medal of Honor Allied Assault. Vince Zampella and Jason West were the two lead designers, and Steven Spielberg returned to help out with the production, becoming the lead writer for the game. It's also worth noting that at this point in time, Spielberg's biggest film of all time, Saving Private Ryan, had been released, and that was probably part of the reason as to why his focus on Medal of Honor was at an all-time high. People were loving the raw, gritty World War II stories of brotherhood and fighting against Nazi Germany, and that was reflected in the sales of these games. With Medal of Honor Allied Assault, however, Spielberg and the rest of the team wanted to put those memorable scenes from Saving Private Ryan into a game, and because of this, when Allied Assault released on the 22nd of January 2002, we saw one of the most memorable missions of any FPS game to date, the Normandy Beach Invasion. A lot of people state to this day that it copied a lot from Saving Private Ryan. The cinematography is pretty much the same, the events are the same, and even the beach layout somewhat is the same, but that was the point. If anything, this was the Saving Private Ryan video game, and that beach mission was intentional as it was one of the most memorable scenes in the film at that point in time. Allied Assault was more than just that mission though. Its new improved graphics made it stand out so much more than the previous games. It allowed for so much more to go on with active skyboxes, vehicles, bigger explosions, more enemies on screen, and higher quality models. It was also the first Medal of Honor to branch out onto PC, Mac, and Linux, allowing the PC gaming community to experience what all the hype was about when it came to the series known as Medal of Honor. Allied Assault was a much faster paced, action-packed military shooter which gave players a good insight into what the Allied invasion of Europe would have been like. The objectives were very similar in style to the original games, but the maps were much larger and objectives were far more squad focused, with Allied soldiers following you during most of the missions. You played as United States Army Ranger Lieutenant Mike Powell, another OSS soldier who ventures through France and North Africa, ruining the Nazis' war effort once again. Allied Assault was a huge hit, and it's no surprise why. It sold 900,000 copies and earned $34.2 million by August 2006, which for the time was huge for any video game, especially a PC-only one. Spielberg's franchise was deemed a masterpiece, and the reviews all praised it, giving it 9s and 10s across the board. It won Best of E3 in 2003, PC Gamer US said it was the best action game of 2002, and Computer Gaming World deemed it Action Game of the Year, and then later went on to say it was the best single-player shooter since Half-Life, something that within the PC gaming world was the biggest praise to ever receive. Allied Assault was in fact so successful that later in the year it received its first expansion, Spearhead, where you play as Sergeant Jack Barnes, paratrooper of the 501st Parachute Infantry Regiment, 101st Airborne Division. It was also where another big name got involved with the series, as Sergeant Jack Barnes was voiced by the legend that is Gary Oldman, showing how big this series had got at the time. A year later, Allied Assault got its second expansion, Breakthrough, made by 2015 Inc. again, but put the player in the shoes of Sergeant John Baker of the US 34th Infantry Division. Here you once again take on the might of the Nazi army at the Battle of Kasserine Pass, an extremely important battle which was one of the turning points within the North African campaign and the war. You also fight in Sicily in one of the most horrific battles within the Monte Cassino. Allied Assault once again not only was fun when it came to gameplay, but it explored some of the important battles of World War II, some that may not have been as explored before, and gave some great insight to the players as to what happened during them through the use of real footage used as cutscenes. Say what you want about Spielberg as a director, maybe you love him, maybe you hate him, but he knew what he wanted from this game franchise and utilised it perfectly, really at a time where interest in World War II and the subject matter surrounding it was at an all-time high. Spielberg knew his audience and the trends of society. Because of it, I think that is why why these first Medal of Honor games did so well. Also, having his name attached to the franchise would have instantly helped boost this game. That same year, EA Los Angeles went on to make Medal of Honor Frontline, a console exclusive game that never released on PC. This title always confused me honestly, because the first level is exactly the same as Allied Assault, but after that the game's levels are completely different. I always thought it was the same game just on console this time, but apparently not. There's not much to say about Frontline honestly, especially after explaining everything Allied Assault did right, but the main thing to take away from Frontline was that it put you back in the shoes of our original protagonist from the first game, Lieutenant James Stephen Patterson, as he storms the Omaha beach and takes on the might of the German forces. During this campaign we also explore Operation Market Garden and team up with the Dutch Resistance and the Airborne. Frontline was a great game, there's no denying that, but after the masterpiece that was Allied Assault earlier that same year, which reached the scores of 91 out of 100, Frontline just wasn't able to beat it, as it lacked the fidelity, the amount of AI in levels, and just little things that were held back by the console's lack of hardware. It did, however, allow console audiences who had originally been the main buyers of the game the chance to experience the Normandy beaches in-game and give them a new title. And it did go on to get 88 out of 100, showing it was a fantastic title for the series. It also helped EA to sell double, having two different games on multiple platforms made by two different developers. But after these two magnificent games, the Medal of Honor franchise would never see a game achieve such high scores, and it would be the start of the decline and eventually their downfall. Continuing on their yearly release, Medal of Honor started working on their next title. However, by this point the guys over at 2015 Inc. had signed a new deal to Activision to start working on a new series titled Call of Duty. But with this in mind, it was up to EA Los Angeles to create this new title and build on the new fans brought in by Allied Assault and Frontline. In November 2003, EA Games released the latest Medal of Honor game titled Medal of Honor Rising Sun, a chance to tell a new story of World War II, this time set within the Pacific after the events of Pearl Harbor. Steven Spielberg is listed as the creator on IMDb, but nowhere on the game's description does it say his involvement within this title in particular. Instead, the game was made just by EA Los Angeles. Rising Sun, as mentioned, focused on the war against the Japanese in the latter half of the war. The game set up a brand new look, exploring the jungles, fighting against more guerrilla type warfare. It explored the horrors of what it was like in these environments, and the story combined the standard real life events of World War II together with a personal story of our main protagonist, Corporal Joseph D. Griffin. Like Allied Assault and Frontline, the game had great graphics, enjoyable combat, and that Medal of Honor polish that made it so recognizable and fun to play. The game, however, released on Xbox, PS2 and GameCube, meaning PC gamers were held back from a Medal of Honor title. However, this may not have been a bad thing. Despite me having fond memories of the game was not critically praised and was the lowest rated console game they had released. Maybe this was because it was under EA Los Angeles and they had to try and ride the wave of Allied Assault and Frontline. Who knows, but the average review score was 68 out of 100. Not a bad game, but nothing to rave about. It did, however, go double platinum, receiving an award for selling so well, selling at least 600,000 copies within the UK alone. Sadly though, the game's rumoured sequel was then cancelled due to poor reviews. It's funny how times have changed. Nowadays, EA honestly wouldn't care about review scores and would only look at sales. Titanfall was proof of that, FIFA's proof of that, any game they have is proof of that, but back then, reviews mattered. Without waiting around, EA Games in November 2003 released the next Medal of Honor game titled Medal of Honor Infiltrator, a very different title developed by NetherRock Limited for the Game Boy Advance. This title was a top-down third-person shooter that had you fighting against the Axis forces. The game also allowed you to use a link feature where you could use your Game Boy Advance with Medal of Honor Rising Sun, allowing you to have a map displayed on your screen, something that was pretty inventive if you ask me. Infiltrator actually got rave reviews all round and hit at 80 out of 100 on Metacritic, with most critics stating it's so much better than the Game Boy Advance version of Medal of Honor Underground, which they labelled as a dud. Once again, EA didn't wait around and continued their yearly releases. EA Los Angeles was the sole developer now for the mainline games, and in 2004 they went on to release Medal of Honor Pacific Assault. This was to be the last Medal of Honor game that Steven Spielberg was credited for as a creator, but once again he isn't listed as writer or anything of note. Pacific Assault was like Allied Assault in the fact that it was solely released for the PC audiences. This game was also following on from the themes of Rising Sun, following the American-Japanese War in the Pacific. Here you play as Private Thomas Conlin, a standard US Marine. The game followed the same premise of every other Medal of Honor game, taking on important tasks, sabotaging missions, and general big battles that reflected some of the real events of that war. This, however, was the first game to feature a flying mission where you pilot the SBD Dauntless and get involved in dogfights with the Japanese Air Force. The game featured a brand new modified engine and was praised more than Rising Sun. It did, however, see a plummet in sales, only receiving a silver award. However, it must be said that this was a PC only release, so it does make some sort of sense. Overall, the game was pretty well received, with most scores being 7 or 8 out of 10, although Edge magazine gave it a 5 out of 10, which seems pretty harsh and also very weird because no other magazine gave it this low of a score. But 2005 saw the next title once again developed by EA Los Angeles, which was for the consoles of Xbox, PS2 and GameCube. This was Medal of Honor European Assault. By this point, pretty much all the original creators had left the series and it was all in the hands of EA. Not saying this is EA's fault by this point, but the turnaround of yearly releases by their sister company says the passion for the series had gone out of the window, and the main reason for why this series had been created had gone from making interesting, historically accurate World War II shooters to a yearly cash cow. Not facts, just the way it looks, and the fact that Spielberg's name had disappeared by this point shows to me that he didn't feel passionate about it anymore. European Assault was Medal of Honor going back to fighting against the Nazis, however this time expanding into more unexplored territories. Here you play as Lieutenant William Holt and complete missions in 4 different areas: France, North Africa, the Soviet Union for some reason, and Belgium. In this game you had different types of objectives: main objectives, side objectives, killing a nemesis aka a German officer, and obtaining his documents. If all of these were completed, you would get a gold star for completing everything. The game was fun as always, with some great gunfights, however was not very historically accurate. It seemed there was much more of a focus on the game being fast paced and filled with action instead of storytelling and world building. Reviewers took note of this and gave the game average reviews. Well, they said average, but the overall score was a 7 out of 10. I guess this is an IGN system where AAA games get average scores of 7+, whereas smaller games will get an average score of 4+. Who knows, but the game didn't do as well, with one reviewer saying one of the biggest problems was there was absolutely no checkpoints, meaning it's more infuriating than anything. The game was also stated to be very short, only consisting of 11 missions, and a real lack of online support for multiplayer, meaning the long-term appeal for the game was hard to justify. By this point, Medal of Honor was losing its edge. The games were getting more and more mediocre when being reviewed, and sales were falling fast. On top of that, they also had big competition with Call of Duty and Battlefield, EA's other World War II shooter developed by their sister company EA Dice. And you know what? I don't get EA. Why do they keep competing against each other? It makes absolutely no sense. But anyway, Medal of Honor took a year break from releasing mainline titles and instead just focused on their efforts on a small title called Medal of Honor Heroes, made by developers Team Fusion to release only on the Sony handheld console, the PSP. The game featured the new award system of bronze, silver and gold for each level, as well as the same style missions the franchise had always gone for, such as sabotage, infiltration and capturing objectives. It also featured an online multiplayer showing off the online potential of the PSP. This game was once again seen as an average title with an average score of 7 out of 10. Eurogamer, however, gave it a 5 out of 10, stating it wasn't a very good title in the franchise. Once again, Medal of Honor was becoming more of an average game with each title, and with Battlefield and Call of Duty finding its feet, it was quickly being swept under the rug. 2007 was a big year for the FPS genre. We had Halo 3 release, which was at the time where Halo was at its peak. We had Battlefield trying something new with their futuristic Battlefield 2142, and we had Call of Duty blow the world away with its latest title, Call of Duty Modern Warfare. Modern Warfare was completely different from any other military shooter around at the time. It got rid of the World War II setting, which was overly saturated by this point, and went down a more modern setting with the latest equipment, a more relatable war setting, and a big focus on iconic characters and storytelling. Modern Warfare dominated the sales, and all focus shifted to Call of Duty as the lead in the FPS genre. Medal of Honor at this point struggled to keep up the sudden shift in theme. In March 2007, EA Los Angeles and Budcat Creations released Medal of Honor Vanguard, another World War II setting game where you play as a paratrooper taking on the might of the Nazi army once again. The one big difference with this game was you started missions by parachuting in. Unfortunately, because this game was limited to the PS2 and the Wii, the graphics looked quite simply awful, especially in comparison to Modern Warfare 2. It also meant that the level designs were limited in terms of skyboxes and the amount of enemies on the field. It did feature a new gameplay mechanics which were pretty different, such as rewarding players for landing at the green flares and having upgrades for the guns, but the all-round reception for the game was poor. The PS2 version got an average score of 63 out of 100, and the Wii version got an even lower 56 out of 100, making it the worst mainline title for Medal of Honor so far. In August that same year, EA Los Angeles went on to release the more up-to-date version of Vanguard with new graphics, new levels, and an all-round better polish. That game was named Medal of Honor Airborne. Speaking for myself here, I loved Airborne personally. I loved the idea of being able to parachute into missions and go wherever you want. I liked the idea of the secret, more obscure landing areas. I liked the combat and the way you could peek around corners or over barriers, something that almost all the FPS games utilize now. And I felt like the guns themselves felt great to use with their really great sound design and the way that you could level them up as you play through it. The AI was pretty intelligent as well, and the levels were set out in much more of a go where you want and do what you want manner, not making this extremely linear. It also explored some of the big battles during the war, such as Operation Market Garden, the Fall of Berlin, and D-Day, but from a different perspective. It felt like something different in a World War II shooter, and it was nice to see Medal of Honor innovating more on their IP, and I personally loved this game and would put it up there with Allied Assault. But unfortunately, reviewers disagreed and gave it only just favourable reviews for the PC and PS3 version, and average reviews for the Xbox 360 version. A lot of reviewers were saying that the pacing was poor, and the game only started getting good in the last couple of levels, which I don't really understand. Sure, there were the bigger levels with more going on, but the other levels were unique in their own way, in my opinion. I will say though, reviewers did point out that it was the best Medal of Honor that had been released since Allied Assault. But sadly, the Medal of Honor IP was just not being favoured by the players. Call of Duty was dominating with its fresh new take on an FPS game, and its multiplayer was way ahead of anything Medal of Honor put out. After their last game of 2007, Medal of Honor Heroes 2, which launched on the PSP and the Wii, the Medal of Honor franchise went on hold. It realised it needed to reinvent itself and work out what the audience wanted from this veteran of a series that had inspired people to see FPS games in much more of a mature light. After a 3-year hiatus, Medal of Honor started working on a new game, a chance to win back the audience, a chance to show that they weren't going to be second place to anyone, and they were the godfather of the military FPS genre. This up-and-coming game was to be a reboot for the franchise, a chance for them to play with something completely different. Originally, the game was to be called Medal of Honor Operation Anaconda, which was to be based on the events surrounding the Battle of Roberts Ridge in Afghanistan. Eventually, the game was retitled to just simply Medal of Honor, keeping it simple and making it clear that this was a reboot of a classic series. The game, however, did keep its focus on Operation Anaconda, but was labelled as a loose retelling of the events surrounding it. It did, however, utilise the experiences of real veterans of the war in Afghanistan to make the game feel realistic and true to its roots, something that the first games of the Medal of Honor franchise did well and helped the game feel authentic. On the 12th of October 2010, EA released their new take on an FPS made by Danger Close Games, the newly named studio which took over from EA Los Angeles. Marketing went all out to sell this game, getting on board Linkin Park for the trailer music and also hiring Ramin Djawadi to compose the soundtrack. There was also a book released at the same time named Medal of Honor, which explored the backstory of the events going on within the game. The book was written by ex-military writer Chris Ryan and was used in a way to help engage audiences into the new world of Medal of Honor. EA were also smart by linking their other big franchise, Battlefield, with this game. If you registered on their site and bought the VIP version of Battlefield Bad Company 2, you were then granted the M24 sniper rifle for multiplayer, encouraging players to engage in this title. Medal of Honor had a pretty interesting story. Its setting was refreshing and its new gameplay looked really enjoyable and revamped, although somewhat Call of Duty inspired, with some levels being full-on action-packed. Critics praised the overall story and the balancing of the gameplay, but stated it was very close looking to Modern Warfare and Battlefield, and apart from the real-life events surrounding the plot, did not really stand out compared to those titles. The game was, however, the highest pre-ordered Medal of Honor game ever, and sold 1.5 million in its first week, and 2 million in its second week. However, its overall sales were still lower than Frontline and Rising Sun, but still it made it to number 1 in the UK sales charts, beating EA's other huge title, FIFA 11. Sales were great, and the break from making 2 to 3 games a year was certainly paying off for the Medal of Honor franchise. However, with an average score of 7 out of 10 with most publications, stockholders were worried about the franchise, saying the reviews were going to dissuade audiences from engaging in the series. Again, it's funny how this was their mentality back then, but EA stated that reviews were subjective and weren't to be listened to all the time. The proof is in the sale, which sounds about right for EA. Controversy did surround the game, however. Because of its modern setting and its real-life events, it included the Taliban, and within the multiplayer you could choose to play as one of these soldiers. Military representatives from all over the globe were angry at this game for choosing this, stating it was deeply offensive and glorifying the Taliban for young players. EA hit back saying, "Most of us have been doing this since we were 7. If someone's the cop, someone's got to be the robber. Someone's got to be the pirate, and someone's got to be the alien." Eventually, however, due to the constant complaints, the word Taliban was removed from the multiplayer and was replaced with the term opposing force. Because of this controversy, the game was never to be sold on military bases, with officials stating it was out of respect to those touched by the ongoing real-life events presented as a game. All round though, Medal of Honor's comeback was seen as a positive for the studio. Its sales were looking good and popularity was coming back to this forgotten franchise. But Call of Duty was still the dominant force in the industry as they explored the Cold War with Black Ops. Medal of Honor seemed one step behind, as they had only finally started exploring Modern Warfare, 3 years after the release of Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. 2 years later, Medal of Honor continued to explore the Modern Warfare setting and made what was to be their final game for many years, Medal of Honor Warfighter. Without going into too much detail on Warfighter, this game was an absolute mess. Despite EA saying they listened to the community about what they want from a game and implemented player feedback, this game was to be the worst performing Medal of Honor game the series had ever seen. Warfighter was plagued with problems, with the Frostbite engine just failing to function on a basic level. The level design was so painfully linear, with nothing even resembling what Medal of Honor was known for, with just constant action almost all the time. The storyline was said to be super amateur and generic, and ultimately the game was just released unpolished and filled with bugs. Publications went to town attacking this game, stating it was an absolute mess and they couldn't recommend it at all. With an average rating of 55 out of 100, this was the worst Medal of Honor in their history. And with only 300,000 copies sold in its first week, it was clear that the stockholders had had enough of this franchise and with EA. And eventually EA decided to pull the plug on the series and it would be placed on hold. For 8 years, Medal of Honor sat dormant as everyone remembered that awful attempt they made at trying to branch out into a new setting. But in 2020, EA and Respawn Entertainment announced the return of this much-loved franchise, but this time in the form of a VR game set in World War II. Was this a chance for Medal of Honor to return to all its glory, as it had been made by the same guys who made Allied Assault, the best title the series had ever seen? That has yet to be seen. But after 8 years, all eyes will be on this title. So what happened to the Medal of Honor franchise? How did it go from being the biggest shooter on the market, with huge names investing in it, to a bang average shooter and then an abysmal one? Well, from doing the research and looking into how the development went with each title, I have to say I think it's down to the passion. When Medal of Honor first released, it had a goal. Spielberg was that creative force. He knew that World War II was a big interest at this point in time thanks to his films, and he wanted to express that through another medium. The first games had a purpose. They were to make enjoyable interactive games that educated you about the events during World War II. They also had personal journeys like in Underground, and to some extent the reboot of Medal of Honor tried to harness this. But as time went on, as popularity for this grew, so did company greed. Medal of Honor was seen more as a big seller year in, year out, and that messaging and everything that set it off on its journey had gone out the window. Instead, it was about getting 2 to 3 titles out a year for PC and for console and for handheld. And because of that, I feel like the passion for making an interesting educational game that had a purpose went out of the window, and instead it became a yearly cash cow, sort of like how Call of Duty has gone throughout the years. For me, it was a great series with some phenomenal games over the years, and although some got bang average reviews, I got to admit, for me, some of these games really meant a lot to me, especially Airborne. But it's clear to see that as the years went on, Medal of Honor struggled to keep things totally refreshing and evolve with the times. Back in the day, it explored many different events like the Japanese War and the Soviet Union. It could have really expanded on those ideas, like looking at the Vietnam War for example. But as people left and studios got reshuffled, focus just kept going back onto the standard World War II setting. So eventually when Modern Warfare was released, Medal of Honor was behind the curve and had a mountain to climb to win back popularity. With the release of the upcoming title Medal of Honor Above and Beyond, we see that the team made Allied Assault return, almost a full circle of events. Could this be the title that reinvents Medal of Honor and bring it back to its glory days? Well, I'm skeptical as it's a VR only game and that instantly creates division. But after seeing Respawn's track record of making really unique and interesting games recently under EA, we could see gameplay and level designs that help this title stand out for audiences and get interested in it again. And maybe if Above and Beyond does well, then maybe one day we can see a return for the Medal of Honor franchise, with its lead developers being Respawn Entertainment, the guys who captained the height of the beloved franchise. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is the full story of the Medal of Honor franchise and how it went from being the most popular military FPS in the industry to one that was bang average and long forgotten. Let me know if I missed any details or anything at all in the comments below. If you enjoyed this history lesson on the franchise and want to see more, then why not give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and check out my other history of videos in the playlist listed below. I'd like to thank my patrons really quick for their ongoing support, starting with our big fish Duquesne23, our 3 sharks JP, Morgan Brazier, and Dylan, and our huge megalodons Sinus and JJD896. Thank you guys so much for your ongoing support. It's very, very much appreciated. If you want to support this channel, I'll leave my Discord, Patreon, Twitter links below, or you can become a channel member by hitting that join button below for early access to my videos. But that is all for now. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I shall see you all in the next one. Until then, cheers.